President Yoon attended the 7th hearing of his impeachment trial today as the Constitutional Court enters the final week of its scheduled hearings. Former Interior Minister Lee Sang-min denied allegations that he was ordered by the president to cut off water and power supplies to certain media organizations on the night when martial law was declared. U.S. President Donald Trump makes it official that 25% tariffs will be imposed on all steel and aluminum products into the U.S. from March. The South Korean authorities held a meeting today for response measures. The Korea Development Institute lowers its economic growth forecast this year to 1.6%, citing political uncertainty and the fallout of Trump's tariffs. It's February 11th, 8 p.m. in Seoul. This is Newscenter.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. President Yoon's impeachment trial resumed on Tuesday with more witnesses testifying at the Constitutional Court. It's the second to last hearing, but the fiery debates are showing no signs of ending soon. We have our correspondent Oh Soo-young live to bring us the latest. Soo-young, the hearing today began with questions over whether President Yoon declared martial law after correct procedures. Let's start with the first witness, former Interior Minister Lee Sang-min.
Sure, Jung-min, good evening to you. Well, former Interior Minister Lee Sang-min appeared to back President Yoon's claims that his martial law was legal against assertions that Yoon had bypassed cabinet procedures required before declaring the decree. And previously, acting president and former finance minister Choi Sang-mok had said that there had not been a formal cabinet meeting beforehand and that he hadn't seen Defense Minister Kim Yong-yeon recommend the decree to the Prime Minister as per the constitutional requirement for martial law. Now, he said while it wasn't scheduled as a cabinet meeting, around 7 members initially gathered and waited for the 11-member quorum to be filled. He said those present would have considered themselves to be in a cabinet meeting. Also, in direct contradiction with prosecutors' records, he denied that he had asked the National Fire Agency to cut water and power to news organisations and said he did not receive such orders from Yoon. While the former minister said he tried to dissuade the president from declaring martial law, he understood where the decision came from. Yoon himself took to reiterate his claim that the opposition Democratic Party has sabotaged the administration by constantly impeaching officials and, crucially, cutting the government budget.
도대체 제가 대통령으로서 야당이 아무리 저를 공격하더라도 왜 대화와 타협을 안 하겠습니다. 야당을 설득해서 뭐를 해보려고 한 건데 이 문명국가에서 도대체 현대사에서 볼 수 없는 이런 줄타내기라고 하는 것은 이거는 대단히 악의적인 거고 이거는 대화와 타협을 하겠다는 것이 아니라 그냥 이 정권을 파괴시키는 것이 우리의 목표라고 하는 것을 명확히 보여주는 겁니다.
Yoon added he believed the martial law proclamation could be signed off on afterwards, given the highly sensitive nature of the decree. National Security Advisor Shin Won-sik also indicated that a cabinet meeting had been held, saying that he'd been told that it was ongoing by Yoon's Chief of Staff Chung Jin-seok. Questions for the third and fourth witnesses focused on election fraud allegations raised by Yoon as a pretext for declaring martial law. Former Third Deputy Director of the National Intelligence Service, Baek Jong-wook, and the National Election Commission's Secretary General, they answered questions regarding this, and Baek said that the service had seemed vulnerable to external attack to the point of a social crisis, he said, but he wouldn't comment on election fraud as the service hadn't been examined for related irregularities. The Election Commission Secretary General Kim Yong-bin also stood witness. He said that he hadn't been made aware of any false voting ballots and said various inspections had been conducted ahead of the general election last year and that it would be virtually impossible to replicate ballots.
Meanwhile, the court has yet to decide on additional hearings beyond the final and 8th hearing this coming Thursday.
Yes, so in order to formally conclude the hearings, the judges would have to listen to the closing arguments by both legal teams, as well as President Yoon's final statement. Now, this, I think, would take around 2 to 3 hours, and given that 4 witness statements are planned for Thursday, it's quite unlikely that the justices will wrap up the hearings then. Experts say more witnesses are likely to be summoned as some of the main testimonies we've heard so far have caused more confusion due to discrepancies with previous statements made in prosecutorial records or conflicting narratives between witnesses. While the court has emphasised its commitment to a speedy trial, there's been concern that the back-to-back witness questioning twice a week doesn't allow much time for a thorough review of the testimonies or evidence. Still, the opposition has called for a quick end to the trial, saying that the evidence is already out there.
Our patience is wearing thin. How much longer must we put up with the baseless conspiracy theories about election fraud? There's already been enough consideration given to the respondent through this week's witness examination. We hope for a swift conclusion to the proceedings.
All right, that was our Oh Soo-young on the president's impeachment trial. As promised, U.S. President Donald Trump on Monday put into action his intentions to impose a 25% blanket tariff on all steel and aluminum imports starting next month, which will affect South Korea as well. Park Go-nu has more.
U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order at the White House on Monday to impose new 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum imports, set to be effective from March 12th.
It's 25% without exceptions or exemptions. If it's made in the United States, there is no tariff. All you have to do is make it in the United States.
The White House also noted countries including South Korea that were exempt from tariffs during Trump's first administration will now be subject to them. South Korea was the 4th largest steel and aluminum exporter to the U.S. last year. Trump also warned on Monday of the possibility of imposing tariffs on items including automobiles and chips, exports that are critical to South Korea's economy. On top of South Korea, Asian countries including China, which are also among the largest trading partners, according to 2024 data from the U.S. Department of Commerce, are set to be affected. However, in other parts of the world, Trump is considering exemptions for Australia, given that the U.S. has a trade surplus with the country due to its significant purchases of U.S. aircraft. Nonetheless, Trump's move is raising fears over the impact of an escalating trade war. Canada, the country that exports the most steel and aluminum to the U.S., and another major trading partner, Mexico, are expected to be among the worst hit. Trump's latest announcement follows plans revealed by the U.S. president the day before to set reciprocal tariffs on countries that tax goods imported from the U.S. Trump said those measures will be implemented in the next few days, adding that he is unconcerned about potential retaliation. That has prompted a strong warning from the European Union.
We stand against unjustified barriers to free and fair trade. We will always take the necessary steps to protect our economic interests, as well as European businesses, workers and consumers from unjustified tariff measures.
While describing the tariffs as unlawful and economically counterproductive, Olaf Jill, the European Commission spokesman, also said the EU remains committed to constructive talks with the U.S. to find mutually beneficial solutions. Park Go-nu, Arirang News.
As South Korea braces for the impact of U.S. tariffs, top officials gathered today to assess possible damage and discuss the next steps, including negotiations with Washington. Our Kim Jong-sil reports.
The South Korean government is on high alert as the U.S. moves forward with a 25% tariff on imported steel and aluminum, a move that could hit key industries hard. Following the U.S. announcement, top officials in Seoul met on Tuesday to discuss response measures.
While we are concerned about the decline in profitability for our industry, we also see opportunities in a fair, competitive environment. We will work closely with the industry to strengthen its competitiveness.
The government said it will also push for last-minute negotiations.
With some time left until March 12th, we will actively engage in negotiations with the US to ensure our interests are fully reflected.
South Korea had previously faced export limits instead of tariffs, but with the new policy, those restrictions will also be lifted on March 12th.
From calculations done in a report by an analyst in Citibank, this should affect Korea's GDP, reduce Korea's GDP by 0.1 to 0.2%. But because the quota has been removed, the damage from tariffs should be less than 0.2% of the GDP.
With Trump hinting at tariffs on autos and semiconductors, experts warn negotiations must be strategic.
Because Trump has threatened many other tariffs on other goods such as automobiles and pharmaceuticals, for full negotiation, we should wait until we know exactly what range of goods that U.S. will put tariffs on.
Officials say they will closely monitor U.S. trade moves and coordinate responses with Japan and the EU. With time running out, South Korea faces tough choices to protect its export-driven economy. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
The South Korean economy is forecast to grow 1.6% this year. Now, this is according to a state-run think tank following a downward revision to reflect the prolonged political paralysis here and the broader market ramifications of Trump tariffs. Our correspondent Moon Hae-ryun with the details.
South Korea's economic growth projection for the year has been slashed on the back of rising uncertainties with U.S. trade tariffs and continued political instability in the country. In its outlook published on Tuesday, the state-run Korea Development Institute forecast the economy to grow 0.9% in the first half of 2025 and 2.2% in the second half, bringing the annual growth rate to 1.6%. That's down by 0.4 percentage points from its previous forecast of 2% released in November. This is lower than forecasts from major institutions such as the OECD at 2.1%, but similar to the Bank of Korea's projection of 1.6 to 1.7%. The agency noted that the prolonged slump in domestic demand exacerbated by political turmoil in the country, combined with a slowdown in exports, is weighing down on economic growth. The construction sector remains in recession while the service sector struggles to recover. Despite strong semiconductor demand, the goods exports were revised down from 1.9% to 1.5%, reflecting deteriorating trade conditions. Weak domestic demand is, however, likely to limit inflationary pressure, keeping the KDI's consumer price inflation forecast at 1.6%. It is also expected to affect the labor market as sluggish domestic demand limits job growth. These projections, however, come with the KDI assuming that U.S. trade restrictions under the Trump administration would be implemented gradually. The faster-than-expected policy moves have significantly increased uncertainty.
If trade tensions under Trump escalate further or political instability drags on longer than expected, growth could fall below the 1.6% we've projected.
That being said, the agency pointed out that tariffs on steel and aluminium are unlikely to have a great impact on the country's GDP growth.
Steel and aluminium make up about 0.8% of our total exports to the US, so in the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge portion of our overall portions. If the tariffs do go into effect, these industries would take a significant hit, but in terms of GDP, we don't expect the impact to be that substantial.
With weak consumption, slowing exports and persistent uncertainty both at home and abroad, the KDI's latest outlook signals that the country's economic recovery remains vulnerable. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Chinese President Xi Jinping has reportedly accepted a Russian invitation to its Victory Day celebrations that are poised to take place in May. North Korea's Kim Jong-un has been also invited to this event. Our foreign affairs correspondent Bae Eun-ji has more.
Leaders of Russia and China vowed to further develop their partnership throughout this year in a video call last month, with Putin addressing Xi as his dear friend.
It is safe to say that foreign policy ties and joint work between Russia and China objectively play an important and stabilizing role in international affairs.
In the new year, I'm willing to work with you to continue guiding China-Russia relations to a new height in 2025, to respond to external uncertainties with the stability and resilience of China-Russia ties.
Citing Russian ambassador to China, Igor Morgulov, Russia's TASS news agency reported Monday local time that Chinese President Xi Jinping has accepted Russia's invitation to attend a Victory Day ceremony, marking the 80th anniversary of the Soviet contribution to victory over Nazi Germany in World War II. The ambassador also reportedly said that Xi, in return, has invited Putin to China for its own commemoration of the end of World War II, scheduled for September. Although China has yet to officially confirm Xi's visit to Russia, if he does decide to attend, it will be the first time in 10 years for a Chinese leader to take part in the event. The Kremlin told TASS that preparations are already underway for Xi's visit to Moscow and Putin's trip to Beijing. Earlier in December, the Kremlin said it had invited leaders of many countries to attend the 80th anniversary of the end of the war, and that includes North Korea. This means that there is a possibility that the leaders of Beijing, Moscow, and Pyongyang may hold talks to seek ways to push back against U.S. President Donald Trump. So eyes are now on whether the three countries will further strengthen their relations and work together to pressure the United States. 배은진, Arirang News.
Elsewhere, the Gaza ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas looks to have become even more fragile, as Hamas intends to postpone the release of Israeli hostages who were expected to return home on Saturday. Cha Yoon has the latest.
The military spokesman for Hamas Al-Qassam Brigades, Abu Obaida, announced on Monday that the release of the Israeli hostages this coming Saturday will be postponed until further notice, accusing Israel of violating the terms of Gaza ceasefire agreement. Obaida said Israel has been delaying the return of the displaced to the northern Gaza Strip, targeting Gaza with shelling and gunfire, and not allowing relief supplies of all kinds to enter as agreed upon. Israel has refuted the claims and instead, according to the Times of Israel, blames the militant group for violating the ceasefire agreement. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz also announced on Monday that he had instructed his military to prepare at the highest level of alert for any possible scenario in Gaza. In response, the Hostage and Missing Families Forum said it stands with the Israeli government and encourages maintaining the conditions that will ensure the safe return of 76 brothers and sisters. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also moved up a political security cabinet meeting originally scheduled for Tuesday evening after the Hamas announcement. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump on Monday local time urged Israel to cancel its ceasefire deal with Hamas and, quote-unquote, let all hell break out if Hamas does not return hostages held in Gaza by noon on Saturday. In a wide-ranging session with reporters in the Oval Office, Trump said he wanted the hostages released at once instead of a few at a time. The three-phase ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas has been in place in Gaza since last month. However, tensions are escalating as both sides are accusing each other of the violation of agreement. Cha Yoon, Arirang News.
In other news, young entrepreneurs from overseas are opting to start their business ventures here in Korea. Our An Sung-jin tells us why.
8 years ago, former Samsung employee Pankaj Agarwal started his own business here in South Korea. Now that business has dozens of employees across 2 countries.
My journey started with Samsung in Korea, and in Samsung there's a program called C-Lab that gave me a chance to spin off my company, and very naturally, from an employee at Samsung, we became an independent company.
He chose Seoul as the base for his edutech startup. Then what are some of the opportunities that a lot of foreign entrepreneurs see in Korea, whether it be perks, or what are some of the characteristics or the reasons as to why foreign entrepreneurs would find Korea as an attractive destination?
I think Korea is very unique in that there are a lot of support programs. The government makes sure that the startups have a lot of opportunities because, startups are always afraid. For example, for us, our first office was sponsored by Korean government.
Pankaj says basing his business in Korea has helped in other ways too.
And what I've really benefited most from Korea, being in Korea, is the Korea brand. There is K-pop, there is K-drama, and now I say, why not K-education? And hence, I want to create something. In fact, in this case, I want to create a successful venture that can help showcase Korea's image in the world, that a foreigner entrepreneur can really build a billion-dollar business from Korea.
U.S. consultancy startup Genome has ranked Seoul's startup ecosystem 9th out of 300 cities around the world. And to help startups get off the ground, the Ministry of SMEs provides special programs to help foreign entrepreneurs settle and grow their businesses, including assistance with visa process, business development funds, and other support.
So far, we've mostly focused on helping Korean startups expand. But in order to foster a startup ecosystem in Korea, we figured it's also important to host foreign entrepreneurs and startups and garner talents from abroad to Korea.
More global entrepreneurs are choosing Korea as a place to start their business. And this Global Startup Center also facilitates market entry for these companies through patent and administrative support or corporate partnership matching.
Korea was the one offering the biggest ecosystem, the most developed infrastructures, and the best opportunities as well. I would say that the visa process was actually very smooth.
Always able to ask other entrepreneurs how they are managing their startup entrepreneurial life in Korea. And yes, so we can accelerate this business here much faster than.
The beginning of a startup involves struggles such as finding resources and investment. That's why efforts from the government and other stakeholders could be the catalyst for attracting global entrepreneurs and sustaining a healthy startup ecosystem for Korea. Han Song-jin, Arirang News.
Moving on to the Winter Asian Games currently being held in Harbin, China. Ekaterina Avvakumova today won South Korea's first ever Winter Asia biathlon gold medal. She won the women's 7.5-kilometer sprint race. Avvakumova became a Korean citizen in 2016 after moving from Russia. Biathlon is a sport that combines cross-country skiing and rifle shooting. In speed skating, Lee Seung-hoon, Chung Jae-won, and Park Sang-won won silver, finishing behind China in the men's team pursuit. Park Ji-woo, Chung Yuna, and Kim Yoon-ji claimed bronze in the women's team pursuit. Cha Min-gyu won silver in the men's 1,000 meters, while Lee Na-hyun won bronze in the women's 1,000 meters. All of the cold wave warnings have been lifted as the bitter cold exceeds the country. However, uninvited dust has made a return. The Seoul metropolitan area, Gangwon-do province, and the Chungcheong-do provinces will see bad levels of ultrafine dust on Wednesday. Rain will begin tonight on the west coast of Jeollanam-do province and Jeju Island. Rain and snow are expected across the country tomorrow. Especially it will snow strongly from dawn into morning tomorrow. Please be careful on the way to work.
Seoul will start off at 0 degrees tomorrow morning, and Chuncheon and Gyeongju at -3 degrees. Gwangju will move up to 9 degrees and 12 degrees in Busan. Tomorrow night, which is Cheongwol-dae-borim, you'll be able to see the full moon through the clouds. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
And that is Newscenter for tonight. Thanks for watching. A panel session up next.